This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin Freakin.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol live. It's a freaking Sunday. Good evening, DJ Dub, Warlord, Clinically, Prometheus. Welcome in, my friends. So glad to see the Cum Patrol is live. Apparently, I might be doing a lot better if I really was called the Cum Patrol. Shelly, good evening. What Cum Town is that one show? Fuzzy Simba, good evening. Maybe I should change it to the Cum Patrol. I hope everybody had a fantastic Christmas. If you were with me on Christmas stream, and I dropped out suddenly, the computer froze up on me. I'm sorry. I was just like, fuck it, it's Christmas. I'm not coming back. And I took my little Christmas break. I apologize. I meant to tell you guys that I was going to take some breaks between Christmas and the New Year, because while you might think that I was off for like 3 weeks, my life was pretty crazy during those 3 weeks, so I wasn't really like kicking back enjoying myself playing video games. So I got to recharge over the last couple of days. Smokey's up here running around. I don't know how this new I've rearranged, so I don't know how the new setup is going to work. Cat shooting to window, which is right there. Here he goes. Oh, you can't even see him yet. Oh, there you go. You got a little tail in the... Do you? Can you even see his tail? There it is. He was like right off camera. Okay, buddy. Okay, come on. My brain gave me the talk on be less racist. Who's... Are you... Wait, what? Your brain is telling you to be less racist? Well, you're British, so, you know... You guys should have some kind of chip implanted in your brain to tell you to be less racist. Smokey, Jesus! Jimmy who? Jimmy what? Are you Jimmy Ray? I do have my Cults and Satanic Panic Live, Laugh, Lucifer mug going. I've gotten to the... Okay, so since I moved to the new apartment, its kitchen is very small. So I haven't, like, unpacked all my other... I just have, like, one mug, one teacup, one chocolate milk glass, a few plates. I mean... If you saw Biden a few minutes ago speaking on Jimmy Carter, you might think that he's the next to go. I had no idea that Jimmy Carter died. No idea at all. CJ, good evening. The news. Heaven gained an angel today. Jimmy Carter in hell. Where the fuck is Ronald Reagan? Speaking of which, I got a special treat for the end of the show. We love debates here on this show. We love presidential debates. This one might be one of the most consequential debates that's ever taken place. So let's go back to, I think it is October 28th, 1980. We're going to watch Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter debate. Princess Kimberly, good evening. I've also got a car chase for the end of the show. Oh, and we got news. News been doing all kinds of stupid shit, like crashing planes. Joe Rogan can tell us why we need Jesus. 2 men were arrested after they parachuted off a crane on Christmas Day. We got wild footage of a bridge in Brazil collapsing. Footage of the cops in Kentucky apparently busting in, serving a warrant on the wrong man and killing him. We got video of a man being beat by cops in New York. A Virginia NICU. neonatal intensive care unit. Yes, NICU, a neonatal intensive care unit in Virginia, has had to halt admissions following reports of several fractures that have been unexplained on babies at the hospital. President of Azerbaijan urging Vladimir Putin to take responsibility for the downing of a airplane. Carrie Lake in the last few hours has said she will not run again. We're going to listen to Jasmine Crockett talk about AOC and the infighting inside the Democratic Party. Speaking of infighting, there's plenty of it going on inside the Republican Party. Hold on. It's not necessarily a meme. Autism Capital here decided to weigh in on the right-wing infighting and sum it up pretty succinctly. Basically, the right split into two factions, tech right and right. The tech right is like, hey, we need H-1B visa people to do the jobs. And the right was like, no, you need to hire Americans. And the tech right is like, but you guys are fucking stupid. And the right is like, well, you don't train us. And the tech right is like, you can't out-train being fucking stupid. And while all this was going on, we learned some people really don't like Indians. Elon Musk chimed in. That pretty much sums it up. This was eye-opening. So if you didn't know what has been going on Twitter on the right, and all the infighting going on, that catches you up. Right-wingers are absolute morons. For Elon, it is. For Elon, it absolutely is. That is the reason he does not want, or the reason Elon wants H-1B visa workers is because if he fires them, they lose their visa, so they will be less likely to speak out. They will be less likely to ask for more money. They will be less likely to unionize. The multiple layers to this thing, but there's a whole bunch of racism going on. It's like I'm in a Facebook group, and there was a dude that was bashing Israel, and I'm like ready to get in on it. Oh, yeah, let's bash Israel. And then I see what he's really saying, and I'm like, nope, I can't get behind that. Because you're not bashing the state of Israel for being a fascist, anti-democratic, settler colonial project. No. You're bashing Israel for being run by Jews, and that don't sit well with me. Especially when you're blaming all Jews when a good majority, I don't know if I can say majority, but a good portion of people that are protesting, especially on college campuses, are Jewish. Jewish people don't like what has been done in their name by Israel. Some of the most outspoken critics of Israel have been Jewish, so I don't get with it. Then I watched Chank on Francesca on the Bitchuation Room. And I had to go back and I started it over again because I got to the end of it and I'm like, what is Chank's argument here? And I still don't really understand what he's trying to say. It's like 2 hours, Warlord. I was doing work while I was watching it, so like I wasn't actually paying attention to it. So I was like, I missed something. I don't know exactly what's going on. Oh, anyway, if you missed meme of the day, Jimmy Carter in hell, where the fuck is Ronald Reagan? Complicated legacy that Jimmy Carter leaves behind, because there's a lot of reason to criticize him. The privatization of our rail industry is one of them. Some people could argue that Jimmy Carter was the start of neoliberalism, but I think it started before him. I think he was a victim of the tides. We had already fucked up Cambodia, hadn't we? We fucked up Cambodia under like fucking Henry Kissinger years before that. Afghanistan, I need to look into what Carter, because Afghanistan, I feel like that was more of a Reagan thing. That's post Jimmy Carter. I don't know. But also foreign affairs, not exactly my wheelhouse or bailiwick. Apparently foreign affairs, not really Jimmy Carter's bailiwick either.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
He went from being Jimmy Who to winning the White House itself, then struggled with crises overseas and a troubled economy at home. A one-term president whose time as ex-president was the longest.
Cicero.
Thank you all.
Among the most active in American history, becoming the first American president to celebrate his 100th birthday. James Earl Carter Jr., he always went by Jimmy, was born in small-town Plains, Georgia, growing up on a farm without electricity or indoor plumbing. He attended the U.S. Naval Academy, studied nuclear physics, worked in the nuclear submarine program. Carter married Rosalind Smith, a friend of his sister's, and she became his lifelong partner. When his father died, Carter left his military career and went home to run the family peanut farm. But he wanted something more. He got into politics, Georgia state senator, then governor.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
In the Old South, Carter was something new.
The time for racial discrimination is over.
He attracted national attention.
Would our first challenger enter and sign in, please?
But was still enough of an unknown in 1973 to appear on What's My Line? 1 year later,
I'd like to announce that I am a candidate for president.
after Watergate, the country was ready for a Washington outsider who said America deserved a government as good as its people. A born-again Christian who promised voters, "I will never lie to you."
We now have a projected winner, James Earl Carter of the state of Georgia, elected the next president of the United States.
Carter narrowly defeated Gerald Ford, becoming the first president from the Deep South in more than a century.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
He started with a common touch, an inaugural walk to the White House, a cardigan sweater to talk to the nation about the energy crisis.
There's no way that I or anyone else in the government can solve our energy problems if you are not willing to help.
He became a champion of human rights.
No member of the United Nations can claim that mistreatment of its citizens is solely its own business.
And the Camp David Accord showed Carter at his best, idealistic, tenacious, leading marathon talks between Egypt's Anwar Sadat and Israel's Menachem Begin, achieving a peace treaty that is still in place today. But closer to home, Carter's inexperience and his distaste for political rough and tumble became serious handicaps. And when the economy tanked, so did Carter's popularity. He seemed to blame Americans themselves.
The erosion of our confidence in the future.
He looked weak, photographed collapsing during a run. And it got worse. In Iran, scores of Americans were taken hostage.
I'm a candidate for president of the United States.
Ted Kennedy announced he would challenge Carter for the nomination. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan, prompting Carter to boycott the Moscow Olympics. Above all, the hostage crisis consumed Carter's final year in office.
Any encouraging news from Iran, Mr. President?
No.
A mission to rescue the hostages ended in tragedy.
8 Americans had died, an unknown number of other Americans had been wounded.
It was my decision to attempt the rescue operation. The responsibility is fully my own.
Still hoping for a second term, Carter beat Kennedy, only to face an even more formidable opponent.
I'll bring new hope to America.
Ronald Reagan projected optimism and confidence, and he didn't think much of Carter.
There you go again.
Jimmy Carter lost in a landslide, and though he finally negotiated the
Pretty sure the debate we're going to watch at the end of the show, that's the there you go again debate.
release of the hostages, they weren't officially freed until just after he left office. Through it all, Carter was sustained by his faith.
You were faced with some huge crises as president. Did you drop down to your knees and pray?
Often, yes, often. In fact, I prayed more per day, per hour, while I was president than any other 4 years in my life.
And his defeat marked the beginning of a remarkable post-presidency. He established the Carter Center, committed to advancing human rights and democracy. He even got some respect from an old adversary.
You gave of yourself to this country, gracing the White House with your passion and intellect and commitment. For that, Mr. President, I thank you, and your country thanks you.
Carter built houses for the poor. He monitored elections, battled disease, and worked for peace around the world, sometimes at odds with his successors. He wrote dozens of books, and in 2002 was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. An extraordinary ex-president, proud of his years in the White House.
Kept the peace. We never went to war. We told the truth. Never lied to the American people. Never misled the American people. So in general terms, I feel perfectly at ease with my term.
Carter was diagnosed with cancer, determined to beat it while maintaining his typical collected demeanor.
I think I have been as blessed as any human being in the world. Everything's been a blessing for me. So I'm thankful and hopeful.
Despite the diagnosis, he continued building houses alongside Rosalind and marked their 75th wedding anniversary in 2021.
75 years, I can't predict.
Rosalind died 2 years later, marking the longest presidential marriage in history. In 2024, Carter marked another milestone, his 100th birthday, with an outpouring of gratitude for his life of service. He brought that devotion to everything he did for family and for country until the end. Thanks for watching. Stay up.
Been waiting the whole fucking time to say, shut up, Lester. Law Dog, welcome in. Probably the most ethical man to hold the office, I would think. I was kind of hoping he'd outlive Biden. That would have been hilarious, I believe. I mean, the two of them were kind of in a race to see who could go to the grave first, weren't they? Hey, Leah, good evening.
This is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories. Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader.
Seriously, Jimmy Carter looked better in 2023.
Jill and I lost a dear friend. I've been hanging out with Jimmy Carter for over 50 years.
Flash, good evening.
And I had countless conversations over those years. I always would be proud to say...
It was a joke, Prometheus.
He used to kid me about it, that I was the first...
Dougie, good evening.
...to endorse him in 1976 when he ran for president. There was an overwhelming reason for it, his character. What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy...
Oh my God, I think Smokey farted when he was getting up.
...by his deeds. Just look at his life, his life's work. He worked to eradicate disease, not just at home, but around the world. He forged peace, advanced civil rights.
Yeah, how's that working out, Biden? He eradicated disease. Yeah, Diseases are making a comeback, aren't they? Forged peace. Yeah, because we live in such a peaceful world right now, don't we? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so cynical. That was Biden speaking just like an hour ago, less than an hour ago, on the passing of Jimmy Carter, which apparently happened overnight. But I found out about it, about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this afternoon? I saw the news. I was hoping that Jimmy Carter could have ran for another term. I mean, fucking Biden wanted to run for another term, so why the fuck not? Biden still regrets dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. Believes he could have beaten Trump. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the old white dude might have stood a better chance than the black woman. I don't know, but apparently he had polling that showed that New Jersey would be a toss-up if he was the candidate. I can still beat Medic. Oh, President Biden still regrets dropping out of the 2024 presidential race last summer after mounting pressure from Democrats to step aside. The president recently told people that he still believes he could have beaten Trump in the November election, despite his rough debate performance in June and his low approval numbers that forced him to leave the race. Following the June 27th debate, more and more Democrats began to call for him to drop out every day so another person could run in his place. The president also saw much of his funding dry up last summer as donors began to doubt his chances of beating Trump. Biden left the race on July 21st and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, who had just over 3 months to campaign before the election. And he probably fucked her over there. Not getting out sooner, not having a primary. That's probably the biggest reason the Democrats lost. And that blame rests solely on Biden's shoulders. And apparently all that cheerleading for him to run again came from Jill and Hunter, that he was not being exposed to actual data and real consultants that would tell him what he needed to hear. Minty, did I tell you good evening? DJ Dub, did I tell you good evening? Welcome in. Hope everybody had a fantastic Christmas. I am back on normal schedule now, if you were wondering where I've been. We ready to go? I took a little break. We're going to be doing... I might take one more break. I might take Wednesday or Thursday off. Maybe both. Who knows? But after that, we'll be back to normal schedule. I'm going to be on here with you guys for New Year's Eve. We're going to do a New Year's Eve Troll Patrol. And then we're going to do the Rockin' whatever the fuck that we usually do. We'll watch the concerts. We'll count down. It'll be a lot of fun. Then once we hit January, we're back to business as usual. And we'll be back to covering the politics. And what a crazy fucking time this is going to be. Oh my God, we've got an inauguration coming up. Another January 6th. Tadpole, good evening. I mean, I guess I'll do like I did January 6th last time, and I'll have dual screens up. So we'll have the House and the Senate, and we'll just switch to the audio, whichever one we want to watch at a given time. Oh God, that's just a few days away, isn't it? When is it like the weekend? Oh, it's Monday. It's a week from tomorrow. Yay. Oh, I should have known that. Okay, Dougie, I will include a kitten stream, some sort of animal. I'll have a cute animal for you. We can do that. We can make that happen. I should have known January 6th was a Monday because it's the debut of Monday Night Raw on Netflix, which they're making a very big deal about. So, Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is going to be one of our favorites to watch in the next session, he went on Meet the Press, no MSNBC this morning, to talk about the election of the House Oversight Chair.
House Democrats are coming under fire now for not supporting Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the top spot on Oversight Committee, and some are blaming the old guard. There's all these men.
I guess it wouldn't be,
another millennial.
I'm sorry, I said chair. It wouldn't be chair. It'd be the ranking member.
Not able to take their job because some older person won't retire.
Live, laugh, Lucifer.
Do you think she was treated fairly?
I mean, it depends on how you define fairly. I was asked a lot about this particular race as someone that obviously serves on the Oversight Committee. And, while I think that both are absolutely qualified, I do think that within the Democratic caucus, we are really stuck in our old ways of doing things, which is you get there by seniority. And so if you've been there longer, then you get the post. And I don't think that we fully sit there and say, who may be best equipped for this moment? That's not to say that Connolly is not, but I just think that overall, that's what we continue to see out of the House Democratic Caucus. And I think that America is looking at us and saying, wait a minute, we lost the election, and we know that the Senate lost seats. Now, the House, we picked up seats, right? But I think they are saying, we're looking towards y'all to show us that you're willing to shake it up if it means that we can move this country forward. But I think that oversight is going to be great under Connolly's leadership. He's obviously not someone who is new to this. He's very...
I didn't even think about it until I think it was Ryan Grimm said it the other day on something I was watching. That, Connolly having throat cancer. That you want a Democrat on oversight, first of all, during a Trump administration, that he's going to have throat fucking cancer. He's going to be seeking treatment, and he wouldn't be able to speak and articulate as well. And that perhaps maybe having somebody like AOC, who is great at communicating, as the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, would be a boon to Democrats, but no.
Very true to this. And I think that, within the caucus, we will have some conversations about how do we do leadership, because on the Republican side, they have term limits. And so you can't sit in those posts very long. So they end up shifting out their leadership a lot more frequently than we do on the Democratic side.
I'm with her. Trump doing it. We're not covering it tonight, but we'll get into it tomorrow or something. Trump doing some crazy things, proposing a term limit bill, asking the Supreme Court to halt the blocking of TikTok. Lenny, good evening. I mean, Flash, if you were a betting man. I mean, I wouldn't. If I was a betting man, I might take that bet. The TikTok thing, I think, is, yet again, part of the tech bro right and the right in their fight. I think the right would like to ban TikTok. And the tech bro right is like, no, TikTok is good. Let's talk about the schism that's going on in the right. It's go over to Fox News to talk about it.
Well, yesterday, you guys know we had quite a few discussions on the debate that's raging online right now about
Avalon.
And
the news be doing stupid shit.
Swami coming out saying, hey, we need this. Our country needs this. Our companies need this. We need this to have this technological advantage over China and other countries. And other people saying, I'm not so sure. A lot of those H-1B visas are for coding.
See, I feel like Flash with the tech bros that are in Trump's administration aren't going to be the ones buying TikTok. It would be like Microsoft or Google would buy TikTok. I think, isn't Microsoft the one that's in like the top running for it? Who's going MAGA? Sir Warmops, what's going on, my friend?
And they're sort of the grunt work of the tech industry, and there's a lot of Americans who would like those jobs.
Now that you're here, we can light one up, tip one back.
Them instead of replacing them with foreign workers who presumably will do it for cheaper. So that's the debate that's raging. And in the midst of that, someone has found a quote from Donald Trump where he says he backs H-1B visas. Now, that would be contradictory to what he has said in the past. We'll have to get to the bottom of that. But here's what he said.
Agreed, DJ Dub.
He said, the New York Post reported on Saturday, he said, I've always liked the visas. I've always been in favor of the visas. That's why we have them. I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I've used it many times. It's a great program.
You know, this is I think, as we talked about yesterday.
He's used it many times.
Debate. It's happening entirely among Republicans.
Yes.
And within Trump world. And
when he says he's used it many times, he means he's used it to acquire workers, right? That he has exploited workers through that program.
Obviously, what he is talking about here is the fact that, he's obviously defending the program. But what I also think is sort of interesting is that he put into place in his first term a lot of restrictions that protected the program, that reformed the program. And, of course, one of the first things Joe Biden did, including opening the border wide open to let lots and lots of unskilled labor into the country that we have no control over, also removed a lot of those reforms to the H-1B visa program so that it was open to widespread abuse.
And in fact, that's what Stephen Miller tweeted back in 2023, talking about the first Trump term.
Fucking Stephen Miller.
H-1B visas. He said Biden axed Trump admin H-1B reforms, which eliminated its use for cheap labor, raised wages to stop displacement, outlawed substitution, and replaced H-1B lotteries with high-paying offers, which precluded substitutions. Regs were scrapped, and now big tech is replacing Americans. So Trump weighs in yesterday suggesting he supports H-1B visas. Now, in the past, he has looked for reforms to H-1B visas. On the surface, this issue, I don't think, has as deep a divide on the right as one might initially perceive. Meaning, I think a lot of people on the right, including obviously Donald Trump, and then...
Okay, first of all, they did a better job of explaining the issue than I have ever heard a Fox News segment explain an issue. What the fuck is going on there?
Elon Musk support the idea of bringing in whatever percentage it may be, 0.01%, whatever the number is, of highly, highly skilled people from across the world. The idea of bring your best. But the program can't be abused to box American workers out. That's been the perspective in the past of Donald Trump. And I
That's not the worry.
Will be the position of Donald Trump in the future. But the debate got deeper and it got more contentious on the cultural level. And for example, that's where I took some exception to what I thought Vivek Ramaswamy made a too sweeping indictment of American culture. Elon, by the way, weighed in immediately after Trump.
Pretty soundly, by the way.
Pretty soundly. Well, Elon, this is a quote from Tropic Thunder. He's memeing. Remember Tropic Thunder with
I don't know,
Robert Downey Jr.
Can we actually read the entire?
I don't know if we can do it. Let's try.
Let's try. Okay, where is it?
Let's do it. This is what Elon put on X. He said, "The reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B." Go ahead, Charlie. You can quote Tropic Thunder.
You can take a big step back and have fun with yourself in the face.
Yes. So that's what he said. He obviously feels very strongly about it. Listen, I want to get into the cultural stuff.
I didn't think that was the one they were going to use.
It's about a lot of people were upset about the H-1B visas, were that famous story.
A lot of R words getting thrown around on Twitter the other day.
Going to lay off these workers. These were some sort of software workers. And then they said, listen, we're going to lay you off, and you will not get your severance unless you train the people that come in. These were, foreign workers on this type of visa. And so that really, really upset a lot of Americans. And I believe that was the context around the conversation about abuses. And lots of people are weighing in on both sides of this. Obviously, Vivek and Elon very strongly on the side of getting more.
Now, while they did do a good job of explaining the issue, I think that this post I read earlier actually does a better job of explaining what was going on. So basically, the right split into two factions, tech right and right. The tech right is like, hey, we need H-1B visa people to do the jobs. And the right was like, no, you need to hire Americans. And the tech right is like, but you guys are fucking morons. And the right is like, well, you don't train us. And the tech right is like, you can't out-train being fucking morons. And while this was all going on, we learned some people really don't like Indians. Elon gave it a stamp of approval, so that's what I'm going with. That's what happened.
For H-1B visa saying that we won't be competitive. The cultural side, I think is fascinating, Will, and Charlie.
The cultural side.
He thinks that we need to.
Your side's a bunch of racists.
Culture has a problem with, not prizing enough those who are valedictorians and academically, succeeding versus those who are the prom queens and the quarterbacks, I guess.
What?
Well, I think they kind of wandered into, and neither Vivek nor Elon Musk, I think, appreciate sort of the nuances and just how what a sore spot this is for a lot of Americans.
How racist they are.
You could go through, in every industry going back 30 years and find examples of where American workers were forced to train their replacements as they unbolt their machinery and send it to China. One thing
Thanks, capitalism.
That I think is interesting, I've known Steve Miller since back when he was on Capitol Hill working for
Sessions.
For Jeff Sessions, and he's always been one of the smartest people and most devoted to reforming immigration. And there are few people that I know who know more about this and care more about it, which of course is why Trump values him so much.
Right.
And if there's a guy that understands where that line is between valuing the best of the best, the cream of the crop from other places, and finding a way to use them in America, versus just looking for cheap labor,
right.
Because all of it is kind of geared towards looking for cheaper labor.
Right.
And
nobody's against importing another Elon Musk.
Right.
We'll take more of those.
Right.
However,
no, keep them.
The job. Let's have that.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And
oh my God, that ended abruptly. What did they say? What did they say in that fucking segment? Why did they cut him off? Now I'm curious, but I'm not curious enough to go find it right now because I don't think it'd be that good. But I do kind of wonder what the fuck they said. Because they didn't throw to a break or anything. Like, they just cut him off abruptly on the YouTube. So they said something that they didn't want repeated. Unfortunately, one of our favorite right-wingers to mock, to follow, to deride and ridicule is not going to be running for public office again. However, I'm sure she's going to have a cozy job somewhere, probably OAN, Newsmax. Carrie Lake says, we know the movement that we have in Arizona, and I will never take that for granted. But there is a corrupt machine here that is hell-bent on making sure I never hold office. So I won't put my family and myself through the torture of running again. I will go to Washington, D.C., Return VOA News to its glory. Oh, Voice of America. That's where she's going? Ugh. I would have thought she was too... Like, I wouldn't have even thought the VOA would hire her. I thought that they would have more... I don't even hold VOA to that high of a standard. But I would have thought they had higher standards than Carrie Lake. Oh, she got a... Oh, okay. Then that makes way more sense then. Oh, Trump appointed Voice of America. I hadn't heard that one. So that's it. They didn't hire her to be a correspondent or a reporter. Okay, makes way more sense now. Also, when I take days off, I unplug from the news. That does make horrible sense. I mean, so is Bernie, but I still love him. There is something up with him. I was seeing it in the VU meter. Is it okay now? Everything good? It looks like we're back to normal. Well, here's the thing is like right before I'm getting ready to go on, it's like 5 till I'm getting ready to hit the open. And I realized my mic wasn't here. I had not put my microphone together. Law Dog, I love that you say when we have another pandemic. I didn't do it tonight, but we gonna get into it tomorrow because I have that many stories to go over. Talk about another pandemic. I hate to inform everyone. Bird flu is here. It is indeed here. And, you guys might not want to eat eggs at the moment. You might want to... Definitely don't buy raw milk. Holy shit. Check your pet food. Holy fuck. We're having a, to me, I feel like the news is not treating it with the severity that it needs to be treated with at the moment, because up until this point, we probably haven't needed to take action on an individual level. Now we do. Multiple cats have died after eating raw cat food from this pet company. Northwest something or other was what it's called. You do if you have raw cat food you order from a company, I would definitely check on that. We have a severe case. We've got the first mutated case, and dozens of people that have been infected, several from raw milk that have had no contact with animals, which is a very, very bad sign. I think a wildlife sanctuary had a bunch of big cats die as well. So yeah, I didn't want to go into that tonight. I got a whole bunch of stories saved. Dr. Peter Hotez, that's the main dude you want to look to. He is not worried. And he said, well, we're in a good position except if 3 things happen. And the 3 things he mentioned were like bad public policy, denialism, and I can't remember what, but all 3 of them were like, holy shit, then we need to fucking worry. We need to hit the panic switch. Let's talk about the plane that went down. That was flying out of Azerbaijan. I always fuck up the name. We apparently have new video just in the last few hours.
Welcome to Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Pamela Brown in for Manu Raju. We have a lot to get to this morning, but I want to start with this breaking news from overnight. 179 people were killed in South Korea after a passenger jet crashed at Muan International Airport. The plane skidded down the runway after it appears there was a problem with the landing gear and then crashed at the end of the runway and burst into flames. 2 crew members were rescued from the tail of the airplane. Let's go now to CNN's Mike Valerio, who has been following this.
Oh, wow. I thought everybody died, but 2 crew members were rescued. Yeah, just wild fucking footage.
A lot to get to this morning, but I want to start with this breaking news from overnight. 179 people were killed in South Korea after a passenger jet crashed at Muan International Airport. The plane skidded down the runway after it appears there was a problem with the landing gear and then crashed at the end of the runway and burst into flames. 2 crew members were rescued from the tail of the airplane. Let's go now to CNN's Mike Valerio, who has been following this disaster from Seoul. Mike, what do we know about how this happened?
Well, Pam, that is the central question here. What caused the landing gear to fail, leading to those dramatic, honestly, heart-stopping videos that we've been watching all day here in East Asia, and now everybody else in the United States and around the world is waking up to? So the key to finding out, Pam, what might have happened here perhaps lays in the hands of the 2 people who miraculously survived. We're talking about 2 crew members who were sitting back as far back as you possibly can be, essentially underneath the tail section of the plane. So in terms of how this all unfolded, just after 2 a.m. local time in Bangkok, Thailand, this Jeju Airlines plane takes off bound for our corner of the world in South Korea. This is an airline that has a great safety record. It's been founded in 2005, a low-budget air carrier. So if you're in the market to go to a vacation spot in this section of Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, you might choose this airline, Jeju Air, which has never had a catastrophe on this scale. We fast forward to the 9 a.m. hour, just about 3.5 hours south of where we're standing, and there is a radio communication received from the airliner, from the control tower, saying essentially, there are birds in the area. Beware of the potential for bird strikes. It's 2 minutes later, Pam, that a mayday call is signaled from the airliner, and then 4 minutes later, it crashes. But unclear how anything like a potential bird strike can lead to the flaps not being up on the aircraft's wings. The airliner landing on the runway, pretty close to the end of the runway, and certainly why the landing gear was not lowered is still a mystery at this hour.
Mike Valerio, thank you so much. Still a lot to learn, clearly. And joining us now to break down more of this is aviation expert Miles O'Brien. So, Miles, we know the plane sent out this mayday 2 minutes before the crash after a warning about birds. How do you assess that? Could a bird strike be the reason for this gear failure?
Maybe, Pamela, but this is a real mystery. A lot of aviation experts are scratching their heads on this one. Now, this is an airport that is on the coast, and it is routine for notifications by air traffic control to go to aircraft indicating bird activity might be a problem. So I don't want to go too far down that road without considering other options. There is video which seems to indicate they lost their right engine, potentially, which might have led to that mayday call. Now, the sequence of events.
I'm pretty sure that I heard that Boeing was cooperating with the airline, so I think it was a Boeing. But also, there's suspicion that it was Russia.
Which put them on that runway without landing gear and without their flaps. In other words, they were not at all in the landing configuration, which would have slowed the airplane down.
Flash confirms it was Boeing.
The landing gear operative, you would have wanted to slow down that aircraft as much as possible. And I should point out, if you lose an engine, that doesn't mean you lose the ability to put down the flaps or, for that matter, the landing gear. The landing gear can be brought down even with a complete hydraulic failure simply by pulling on some emergency switches, which allow the gear to fall down gravity. So it's a real head scratcher right now, Pam, as to what the sequence of events were. Clearly, this was a flight crew that was managing an emergency. There was a Mayday call, but how is it that it ended up on the runway pretty much in the cruise flight condition? No flaps, no slats, no landing gear.
So the plane hit something at the end of the runway. It's not yet totally clear what that was. Why was something at the end of a runway to begin with, though?
Well, this is, to me, the most tragic part of what we just witnessed. There's an antenna system that needs to be...
North Korea and Russia working together at the moment.
It's part of the instrument landing system that airliners use to get you on the ground on that dark and stormy night. It's called the local...
Mama, good evening.
Basically keeps the airplane...
Good evening.
And those antennas need to be where the runway center line is. Now, what's unusual about this and dangerous is those antennas were built on top of a mound with reinforced concrete. So it was a rather significant barrier right at the end of the runway, which didn't give the airliner much overrun capability. In the U.S. and frequently at many other airports, what they would do is put those antennas as sort of breakaway antennas, kind of frangible towers that the airplane would have gone through and would have caused much less damage. Also in the U.S., at more than 100 runways now, we have these engineered blocks at the end of the runway, which are designed to collapse under the weight of an aircraft. And that obviously was not present here either.
I would love to see a unified Korea, but at this point in time, like, South Korea would blow the fucking minds of almost all the North Koreans. Like, just walking down a street in South Korea, they wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Be like taking a medieval peasant and sticking them in the middle of like a cyberpunk utopia. Cyberpunk utopia. It's like an oxymoron. I mean, it's not likely as long as it's Kim, right? It's the Kim dynasty, because their first name is their last name. Not the Un dynasty, it's the Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-sung, blah, 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 whatever the fuck. Azerbaijan's president is demanding that Russia acknowledges its guilt.
Rusiya tərəfi Azərbaycandan üzr istəməlidir.
The Russian side must apologize to Azerbaijan. Secondly, it must acknowledge its guilt. Thirdly, those responsible must be punished, brought to criminal responsibility, and compensation must be paid to the Azerbaijani state, to the injured passengers and crew members. These are our conditions. The first of these was fulfilled yesterday. I do hope that the other conditions will also be accepted.
Onlardan biri, bax, birincisi artıq təmin edildi.
He said it was like the first condition was met yesterday, but didn't Putin apologize while not accepting responsibility? Did I get that wrong? All right, the next 3 stories are pretty bad. So if you If you don't like the more graphic side of the show, give us about 20 minutes and come back. Because I apparently got some videos of the cop stories, too. Virginia Hospital stops the NICU admissions after babies found with unexplainable fractures. Hospital in Virginia has announced it will no longer admit any babies into its neonatal intensive care unit after several babies were found with unexplainable fractures. According to Henrico Doctors Hospital, in late November and December, the hospital discovered that 3 babies in its Henrico Doctor Hospital NICU had unexplained fractures, similar to an incident involving 4 babies in the summer of 2023. The hospital said it initiated an internal investigation, informed the families, and notified the proper authorities and regulatory agencies. Out of an abundance of caution, we are not admitting any additional babies into our NICU at this time. While fractures occasionally happen with preterm babies since they lack full fetal bone development, we are actively working to determine how these fractures occurred. The hospital said it had taken the following steps to enhance safety at its NICU, requiring all NICU caregivers to participate in supplemental unit-wide in-person safety training programs, adopting the practice of conducting additional head-to-toe examination of each NICU baby, led by neonatologists, probably butchered that word, instituting mandatory training for all healthcare providers who interact with minors, educating the providers on the identification and reporting of suspected neglect or abuse. Installing 2 new security systems to ensure proper care and patients' peace of mind. A camera system that records all activity in its NICU rooms 24/7 and is available for viewing in real time or at a later date. Additionally, the hospital has said it's implemented an observer system where each provider in the NICU is accompanied by another clinician when they are present in a baby's room to help ensure all protocols are followed. Wild. We're learning new details about a shooting where Kentucky State Police say a London police officer shot and killed a 63-year-old man. Apparently, the man was 100% innocent. The cops were at the wrong location.
New tonight, video shows the moments leading up to a southern Kentucky man's death as police say they were trying to serve a search warrant. 63-year-old Douglas Harless died Monday at his home at 511 Vanzant Road in Laurel County.
Fucking hate this shit. They did it inside the story, in the body of the story that I was reading from before I put the video up, and then they did it again. They're burying the lead. The cops shot an innocent man. They make it seem like they were serving a warrant on this motherfucker now, didn't they? Go back and listen to it again. I hate shit like this.
New tonight, video shows the moments leading up to a southern Kentucky man's death as police say they were trying to serve a search warrant.
A southern Kentucky man's death. The police shot him and killed him as police were trying to serve a warrant. They were in the wrong place. Why are you not properly relaying and framing the story?
63-year-old Douglas Harless died Monday at his home at 511 Vanzant Road in Laurel County. Now, that street number is different from the one dispatch audio we first brought you last night.
It's different from the one. Oh my God. They went to the cops are incompetent, went to the wrong home and shot an innocent man. That's your story. That's literally the headline. You're contorting yourself to avoid saying what really happened.
References multiple times.
assist London PD, 48 Van Zant Road, 489 Van Zant Road. Units on scene can serve search warrant.
And now we're seeing how things unfolded through a neighbor's surveillance camera. But first, some might find this video distressing. It's our top story.
You should find it distressing.
The video starts at 11:50 p.m. Monday.
Why are you serving a warrant at 11:50 p.m.? I can understand early morning. Don't fucking show up at 11:50 p.m. No.
London police are heard banging on Harless's door and announcing themselves. They're heard again over the sound of barking dogs.
Ida, good evening.
As we speed things up to 11:51, officers are seen moving around Harless's porch as others move to different positions around his home. Then, what sounds like 5 gunshots. And then things get quiet. Several officers are seen exiting the home while others gather in the yard. It's 11:52. From Laurel County dispatch audio we've obtained, we know it's at around this time officers call for assistance.
Van Zant Road, stand by in the area, shots fired. Where they go? They're at 49 Van Zant Road, serving a search warrant.
But Kentucky State Police say Harless was shot at 511 Van Zant. This is 511 and 489 is down the road. We spoke off camera with the owner of the property. He tells us nobody has lived in 489 for months.
Shots fired. 489 Van Zant Road. They have EMS going for the perpetrator who's been hit.
KSP says life-saving measures were performed on Harless at the scene, but he was then pronounced dead by the Laurel County coroner. As is standard practice, state police are now investigating Harless's death, and the officer involved is on administrative leave. We filed open records requests for any body camera video from that night, as well as a copy of the search warrant signed off on by the courts. We thought it was
my God. Happens way too fucking often. And what was the warrant even for anyway? Yeah, we didn't get the dispatch audio in this story.
Video shows the moments.
No, I want the dispatch audio. This is the dispatch audio. Oh my God, I'm sorry, guys. Did officers go to the wrong home in deadly Kentucky police shooting? Yes.
Where they go? Here.
It picks up with shots fired. No, I wanted the audio before that. I wanted to know what they were serving a warrant for. Why would you roll up at 11:50 to serve a warrant? And if it was for something fucking stupid, if it was like child support or something like that, you know, if you've got a dangerous criminal, you got a murderer, yeah, you roll up on them at 11:50 because they're dangerous. You know, just go to somebody's house, especially when you're at the wrong fucking home. You're in America, in backwoods London, Kentucky, where dude probably was armed. It's got a bunch of people banging on his door at 11:50 at night. He ain't done shit. He is well within his rights to go out with a fucking gun. Ooh, these stories piss me off. So let's do another one, I guess. Go to New York City, where cops apparently decided to beat the fuck out of a man who was already handcuffed.
The New York Attorney General's office released new body cam footage as part of its investigation into the fatal beating of an inmate upstate. And we want to warn you, the video is disturbing.
Oh, I'm sure.
It shows correctional officers at the Marcy Correctional Facility punching and kicking Robert Brooks as he's handcuffed behind his back in a medical exam room on December 9th. The 43-year-old died a day after the encounter.
Office obtained video from body-worn cameras that 4 of the correction officers were wearing at the time of the incident. The 4 officers had their body-worn cameras powered on, but did not activate them. So their cameras were recording video in standby mode without recording sound.
Brooks had been serving a 12-year prison sentence since 2017 for assault. Governor Hochul denounced the attack, called for resignation of the officers involved, and ordered an investigation into Brooks's death.
12 years for assault seems awfully fucking high. $12 years seems like attempted murder, not assault. This one may be a little disturbing to you, but it's not. At least it's not the cops beating the fuck out of somebody. Terry, good evening. We're going to go down to Brazil, where apparently a man was protesting how dilapidated a bridge in his community was. And, that's the setup. Oh, he's a city councilman.
Sai perto, meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Ai. Ô Senhor Jesus, abençoe, Pai. Ninguém tenha morrido, Senhor. Oi, 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 sai daqui! Sai perto! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Ai.
Meu Deus do céu?
Abençoe, Pai. Ninguém tenha morrido, Senhor. Oi, 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 sai daqui! Sai perto! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu! Ai. Ô Senhor Jesus, abençoe, Pai. Ninguém tenha morrido, Senhor.
What a wild fucking video. So there's a city councilman out showing the state of the bridge.
Oi, 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 sai daqui! Sai perto! Meu Deus do céu! Meu Deus do céu!
It does seem like a made-up language.
Meu Deus do céu!
Real deal, Lucille.
Ninguém tenha morrido, Senhor. Simons! Meu Deus do céu, Dwayne. Olha só o jeito que tá. Meu Deus, Senhor Jesus. Senhor Jesus. Elias. Cancela. Pode cancelar.
It's Portuguese, take it up with him.
Meu Deus do céu, todo mundo tava vendo isso aí. Pra que o pessoal foi?
I still, to go back and look at the size of Portugal and to see like where like colonial Portugal, like where all they fucking conquered, it's kind of wild. I learned that Brazil was Portuguese speaking when I had a friend who was from Brazil in college this was in the, like, you know, 4th, 5th year of Facebook or some shit. I'm telling him on Facebook, happy birthday, and I do it in Spanish. And he's like, I got no clue what the fuck that says. I speak Portuguese. It's like, oh, well, damn. All right, from here on out, it's fun times. I'm going to take a commercial break real fast. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about two men who parachuted from a crane on Christmas. Dude that broke into a church and apparently spiked the holy water. Joe Rogan can tell you why you need Jesus, and we're going to watch Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan debate from 1980. All that and a lot freaking more on the other side of the break. Go ahead, light one up, tip one back. It's all right to have one fun before you hit the sack. I'm JustinFREAKIN.
All we're establishing is this guy's wicked, sick aesthetic.
Not high enough for this shit.
I guess I gotta thank Matt Wall for introducing me to JustinFREAKIN.
Hey there, y'all. We're about to get stupid, locked into what that news beat doing. Fu Manchu and a slick bandana, colder than ice, smoother than Santana. Audio, video, chat and calls. Right-wing nut jobs haunt the halls. What you wanna watch? Hey, what you think? And there's only one choice. It's JustinFREAKIN.
The guy's, he's a formidable voice in the culture.
Light one up and tip one back. It's a right to be high. Let's grab a snack. It's fucking news, quit panic, attack, and play your cards right and get a titty slap. Jump in Discords, have some fun. The man will talk to everyone. Get high and try to debate. When shit pops off, chat thinks it's great. What do you think you're doing? Join the troll patrol. Wherever discourse is brewing, he gives it that southern drawl.
So let's go ahead and bring in Justin. Hey Justin, how's it going, brother?
First of all, I want to say you're poser South. I'm in Alabama. I'm the real South.
Okay, all right. So why don't you tell us what it takes to be a man?
Well, I don't know. I'm in Alabama and I'll fuck a man in a dress. Why won't you fuck a man in a dress? Are you that insecure that you won't fuck a man in a dress?
That's fantastic. So you're okay with that, right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't I?
Good.
Right-wingers are morons.
Light one hit and hit one back. One more click before we hit the set an alert when that shit goes live. Social fucking support and hit subscribe. Light one up and take a hit. He does no harm, but he takes no shit. He's the last one standing when the ship is sinking. Let's take another rip for JustinFREAKIN.
Light one up, tip one back. I'm JustinFREAKIN.
Not high enough for this shit.
And you know what? I'm not. I'm not at all. Let's get more high. I've only got like a couple of bowls left. I've been smoking. It's resin, but also I've had concentrate, so the resin that come out of my bowls has the concentrate in it because I don't have an actual dab rig. So the resin's really good shit. That's what I've been smoking out of the bong, but I'll have a real bowl after I get off stream. I'll have dinner, get real high, play video games. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. I've got a client that's in Antarctica right now. And she has been I'm having some microphone issues tonight. I'm going to first of all, this isn't my usual mic. You guys know that I got the gold one. But like the mic clip for the gold one broke, so I have to get a new mic clip for it. This is not, but like, it just sounds good. It's a good sounding mic. Byronic, good evening. Welcome in. So glad to see you. Oh yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to smoke. We're smoking the herb again. When Incubus attacks. I hope everyone had a good Christmas. I had a good Christmas. Enjoyed my ribs. I really nailed my fucking ribs. Oh my god. I just ate the last of them tonight. I would love to have found some footage on this. Hold on, let me see if somebody, because I can't imagine these guys did this and they weren't on like the gram or something. Yeah, I don't think there's any footage of it, but 2 men were arrested apparently on Christmas Eve.
2 men arrested after they jumped off a crane in Raleigh, North Carolina. Police say the 2 were ordered to come down from the crane, but instead jumped off it, then parachuted into a parking deck. The 2 have done thousands of jumps as competitive skydivers and are part of the U.S. Parachuting Association. Mike Hollister owns Skydive Raleigh and says he knows the 2 well.
As far as talent goes, they're some of the best. And then, honestly, they're some of the best people I've ever known. Outside. Sometimes it goes south, and I'm glad this wasn't one of those times.
The construction company says thankfully no one was hurt, and they're evaluating the security protocol. Both men are facing misdemeanor charges with penalties that include a fine of up to $1,000 and up to 60 days in jail.
I'm scared of heights, so. Is it just me, or is she doing the Taylor Swift face? You guys know the meme I'm talking about? That's the Taylor Swift face, right? Man accused of pouring whiskey into holy water during Christmas Mass at Catholic Church. He's just trying to help you fuckers liven up on Christmas. Come on. A man was arrested after he allegedly poured whiskey into holy water during a Christmas Mass at a Catholic church. According to the St. Mary County Sheriff's Office, 56-year-old Thomas Campbell Bowling Von Goetz. Like fucking Theo Vaughn's name. Thomas Campbell Bowling Von Goetz was taken into custody after 2 alleged incidents at churches. He did it twice, which police said disrupted religious services and endangered citizens. Authorities wrote that Von Goetz Von Goetz entered Holy Angels Catholic Church in Maryland around 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve. After dropping an onion in the aisle, as was the style at the time, police said Von Goetz disturbed the peace of those attending Mass before being followed out by another individual who wished to ensure he was leaving the property. Once outside, however, authorities wrote that the suspect assaulted the individual by throwing tangerines at him. Later in the night, at a midnight mass at St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Leonardtown, Maryland, Von Goetz turned up with a bottle of whiskey and allegedly disrupted the service by pouring it in the holy water before threatening to harm the parishioners. While being escorted out by other attendees, Von Goetz allegedly attempted to hit the other individuals with the bottle. Authorities wrote that Von Goetz was detained until deputies arrived and he was taken into an area hospital for medical evaluation. Von Goetz was arrested on December 26th and charged with the following: second-degree assault, disorderly conduct, defacing religious property, religious crime against a group, obstructing a religious exercise. Who gives a shit about religion? Threat of mass violence. Get it? Mass violence during Christmas Mass? Oh! Well, if they wanted me to pronounce it Von Gates, they should they should have spelled it correctly. Oh, he's also charged with disturbing the peace. Been there, done that. If you don't know what I mean when I say Theo Von's name, it always fucking cracks me up. Because Theo Von's name is actually Theodore Capitani von Kurtawowski III. And the motherfucker is a descendant of, like, Polish royalty. Out here fucking hosting a podcast, like he's some redneck. A descendant of Polish royalty. Speaking of bro dudes with podcasts, Joe Rogan says we need some Jesus, and you know what? He might be right if Jesus handing out, turning the holy water into whiskey. I might be down with it.
People are going to understand the need to have some sort of divine structure to things, some sort of belief in the sanctity of love and of truth. And a lot of that comes from religion. A lot of people's moral compass and the guidelines that they've used to follow to live a just and righteous life has come from religion.
What is that statistic? Like something like the Academy of Arts and Sciences is like 96% atheist, whereas Death Row is like 99% Christian. Come on, Joe. Go on.
And unfortunately, a lot of very intelligent people, they dismiss all of the positive aspects of religion because they think that the stories are mere
what positive aspects?
Superstitious fairy tales that, you know, they have no place in this modern world, and, you know, we're inherently good and your ethics are based on your old moral compass and we all have one, and that's not necessarily true. We need Jesus. I think for real. Like if he came back now, it'd be great. Like Jesus, if you're thinking about coming back
right now,
now's a good time.
Yeah, pretty soon. Yeah,
now's a good time.
The idea.
Is he talking to Aaron Rodgers? Is that who that was? Is PragerU still in the or PragerU? Is Dennis Prager still in the hospital?
That God is completely unnecessary for moral behavior, for a moral society, is a belief that people hold because they want to believe it.
Or is it possible that I have numerous examples of people that are moral absent religion, and I have millions of examples of people with religion that behave immorally? Could that be, Dennis?
They don't want to think God is necessary. It's not a matter of they don't want to think God exists. They don't want to think God is necessary. By the way, I've made this point often. I have brought a lot of people to taking God and religion seriously, God and the Bible seriously. I have very rarely done it by arguing for God's existence. I have always argued for God's necessity. That is much more important. If you believe in God, but it plays no moral role, what is the...
Here's the thing that gets me, is if you are a sociopath or a psychopath, then maybe you might need a imposed hierarchy on you and a set of rules to live by in order to prevent yourself from being the shitty person that you actually are. Could that maybe, and also, lending credence to that idea is the fact that, churches tend to attract psychopaths and sociopaths.
The difference whether you believe in God or not. I have made this point all of my life about the being watched issue. Do people drive as carefully when there is a police car driving next to them or no police car? Clearly, if you think that you are being watched, you act.
I don't drive safely because I'm being watched. I drive safely because I don't want to die. I don't want to injure someone else on the road. I have property that I don't want to destroy. Dennis, I'm a great person to use as an example for this because I don't speed. I had the human resource person pulled me into the office at the last TV station I worked for. And she said, "We got reports that you were speeding up the hill." And I looked at her like dead in the eyes, like, "Couldn't have been me. I drive like a grandmother." Ha ha. And she was like, "Well, they described your car." And I was like, "Couldn't have been me. Ask anybody in the station. I drive like a grandmother. They hate coming up the mountain behind me. Ha ha ha. Nice try."
Differently. That should go without saying. But we live in the age of secular foolishness where people deny the obvious. Do you know that I quote a study in my
God isn't obvious, you bitch.
The Bible, the Rational Bible, and this was fascinating. Societies that believe in hell have better conduct than societies believe everyone goes to heaven.
What? What? How could you quantify that data? Where did you get that data from? Sounds impossible to actually be able to jot down and do research on. What society believes in everyone going to heaven? What? I don't even know who he's referring to. Jimmy Carter getting to Hill earlier today. Where the fuck is Reagan? I think this is going to be fun for us. We're going to go back to 1980. We go back to 1980. I believe it was October 28th. October 28th, 1980. This is the presidential debate between Governor Ronald Reagan and incumbent President Jimmy Carter.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Heinerfeld of the League of Women Voters Education Fund. Next Tuesday is Election Day. Before going to the polls, voters want to understand the issues and know the candidates' positions. Tonight, voters will have an opportunity to see and hear the major party candidates for the presidency.
I think this is going to be enlightening to watch.
State their views on
see how
issues that
different
affect
debates
us all.
were. What
The
was
League
this,
of Women
40 years
Voters
ago?
Is proud to present this
44
presidential
years ago.
debate. Our moderator is Howard K. Smith.
Thank you, Mrs. Heinerfeld. The League of Women Voters.
Earl Gray, good evening.
Welcome to the Cleveland, Ohio
This is the
Convention
1980 presidential debate between Jimmy Carter and Ronald
Jimmy
Reagan.
Carter, the Democratic Party's candidate for re-election to the presidency, and Governor Ronald Reagan of California, the Republican Party's candidate for the presidency. The candidates will debate questions on domestic, economic, foreign policy, and national security issues.
Oh, and if you were unaware, Jimmy Carter has passed away.
A panel of distinguished journalists who are here with me. They are Marvin Stone, the editor of U.S. News and World Report, Harry Ellis, national correspondent of the Christian Science Monitor,
Fuck that dude.
Hilliard, assistant managing editor of the Portland Oregonian, Barbara Walters, correspondent, ABC News. The ground rules for this, as agreed by you gentlemen, are these. Each panelist down here will ask a question, the same question, to each of the two candidates. After the two candidates have answered, a panelist will ask follow-up questions to try to sharpen the answers. The candidates will then have an opportunity each to make a rebuttal. That will constitute the first half of the debate, and I will state the rules for the second half later on. Some other rules: the candidates are not permitted to bring prepared notes to the podium, but are permitted to make notes during the debate.
One of the things I want to point you guys to on this.
Agreed on, I will reluctantly.
This was put on by the League of Women Voters.
We ask the convention center audience here to abide by.
They ain't getting pre-prepared questions that both campaigns have agreed to.
During the debate. Now, based on a toss of the coin,
this is going to feel a lot different than the one we watched with Trump and Harris.
Governor, as you're well aware, the question of war and peace has emerged as a central issue in this campaign. In the give and take of recent weeks, President Carter has been criticized for responding late to aggressive Soviet impulses, for insufficient buildup of our armed forces, and a paralysis in dealing with Afghanistan and Iran. You have been criticized for being all too quick to advocate the use of lots of muscle, military action, to deal with foreign crises. Specifically, what are the differences between the two of you on the uses of American military power?
I don't know what the differences might be because I don't know what Mr. Carter's policies are. I do know what he has said about mine. And I'm only here to tell you that I believe with all my heart that our first priority must be world peace, and that use of force is always and only a last resort when everything else has failed, and then only with regard to our national security.
And is that what happened in your administration, sir?
I believe also that meeting this mission, this responsibility for preserving the peace, which I believe is a responsibility peculiar to our country, that we cannot shirk our responsibility as the leader of the free world because we're the only one that can do it. And therefore the burden of maintaining the peace falls on us.
He looks like Biden.
To maintain that peace requires strength. America has never gotten in a war because we were too strong.
He was nowhere near as old as Biden there.
War by letting events get out of hand as they have in the last 3.5 years under the foreign policies of this administration of Mr. Carter's, until we're faced each time with a crisis. And good management in preserving the peace requires that we
maybe people just looked older back then
and try to intercept before.
Reagan's actually 35, Carter is 42 here.
But I have seen 4 wars in my lifetime.
People just aged differently back then.
I have a grandson. I don't ever want to see another generation of young Americans bleed their lives into sandy beachheads in the Pacific, or rice paddies and jungles in Asia, or the muddy, bloody battlefields of Europe.
Mr. Stone, do you have a follow-up question for the governor?
Yes, Governor, we've been hearing that the defense buildup that you would associate yourself with would cost tens of billions of dollars more than is now contemplated. And assuming that the American people are ready to bear this cost, they nevertheless keep asking the following question. How do you reconcile huge increases in military outlays with your promise of substantial tax cuts and of balancing the budget, which in this fiscal year...
Ooh, I can answer that one.
...more than $60 billion in the red?
He didn't balance the budget.
I have submitted an economic plan that I've worked out in concert with a number of fine economists in this country, all of whom approve it, and believe that over a 5-year projection, this plan can permit the extra spending for needed refurbishing of our defensive posture, that it can provide for a balanced budget by 1983, if not earlier, and that we can afford, along with the cuts that I have proposed in government spending, we can afford the tax cuts I have proposed, and probably mainly because Mr. Carter's economic policy has built into the next 5 years, and on beyond that, a tax increase that would be taking $86 billion more next year out of the people's pockets than was taken this year. And my tax cut does not come close to eliminating that $86 billion increase. I'm only reducing the amount of the increase. In other words, what I'm talking about is not putting government back to getting less money than government's been getting, but simply cutting the increase in spending.
The same question now goes to President Carter. President Carter, would you like to have the question repeated?
Quesadilla, good evening.
Yes,
yeah, the guy that sold weapons to Iran that's talking about world peace.
In this campaign, you've been criticized for, in the give and take, for responding late to aggressive Soviet impulses, for an insufficient buildup of our armed forces, and a paralysis in dealing with Afghanistan and Iran. Governor Reagan, on the other hand, has been criticized for being all too quick to advocate the use of lots of muscle military action to deal with foreign crises such as I've mentioned. Specifically, what are the differences between the two of you on the uses of American military power?
Mr. Stone, I've had to make thousands of decisions since I've been president, serving in the Oval Office. And with each one of those decisions that affect the future of my country, I have learned in the process. I think I'm a much wiser and more experienced man than I was when I debated 4 years ago against President Ford. I've also learned that there are no simple answers to complicated questions. H.L. Mencken said that for every problem, there's a simple answer. It would be neat and plausible and wrong. The fact is that this nation, in the 8 years before I became president, had its own military strength decrease. 7 out of 8 years, the budget commitments for defense went down, 37% in all. Since I've been in office, we've had a steady, carefully planned, methodical, but very effective increase in our commitment for defense. But what we've done is to use that enormous power and prestige and military strength of the United States to preserve the peace. We've not only kept peace for our own country, but we've been able to extend the benefits of peace to others. In the Middle East, we've worked for a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt successfully, and have tied ourselves together with Israel and Egypt in a common defense capability. This is a very good step forward for our nation's security, and we'll continue to do as we've done in the past. I might also add that there are decisions that are made in the Oval Office by every president which are profound in nature. There are always troubled spots in the world, and how those troubled areas are addressed by a president alone in that Oval Office affects our nation directly. The involvement of the United States and also our American interest. That is a basic decision that has to be made so frequently by every president who serves. That's what I've tried to do successfully by keeping our country at peace.
Mr. Stone, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. I mean, Russia invaded Afghanistan.
On the use of military power, and let's talk about one area for a moment. Under what circumstances?
In what way can we criticize Carter
to deal with, for example, a shutoff of Persian oil Gulf, if that should occur, or to counter a Russian expansion beyond Afghanistan into either Iran or Pakistan? I ask this question in view of charges that we are woefully unprepared to project sustained, and I emphasize the word sustained.
That sounds an awful lot like the argument that, you know, NATO pulled Russia into Ukraine.
My State of the Union
I
this year,
don't buy that.
That any threat to the stability or security of the Persian
Not saying that you're wrong, Lum. I don't know enough about the situation back then to make an educated,
military presence
have an educated opinion on it.
Now we have 2 major carrier task forces. We have access to facilities in 5 different areas of that region. And we've made it clear that working with our allies and others, that we are prepared to address any foreseeable eventuality which might interrupt commerce with that crucial area of the world. But in doing this, we have made sure that we address this question peacefully, not injecting.
And I'm amazed. I mean, it dovetails.
But letting the strength of our nation be felt in a.
But I'm amazed that foreign policy was the first question and not energy production.
Our interests will be protected in the Persian Gulf region, as we've done in the Middle East and throughout the world.
Governor Reagan, you have a minute to comment or rebut.
Well, yes, I question the figure about the decline in defense spending under the 2 previous administrations in the preceding 8 years to this administration. I would call to your attention that we were in a war that wound down during those 8 years, which of course made a change in military spending because of turning from war to peace. I also would like to point out that Republican presidents in those years, faced with a Democratic majority in both houses of the Congress, found that their requests for defense budgets were very often cut. Now, Gerald Ford left a 5-year projected plan for a military buildup to restore our defenses, and President
Dwight D. Eisenhower warned about the rise of the military-industrial and congressional complex.
60 ships out of the Navy building program that had been proposed, and stopped the B-1, delayed the cruise missile, stopped the production line for the Minuteman missile, stopped the Tridents, or delayed the Tridents submarine, and now is planning a mobile military force that can be delivered to various spots in the world, which does make me question his assaults on whether I am the one that is quick to look for use of force.
President Carter, you have the last word on this question.
Well, there are various elements of defense. One is to control nuclear weapons, which I hope...
So criticize him for being too dovish.
Single issue.
And then criticize him for...
Another one is how to address troubled areas of the world. I think habitually, Governor Reagan...
Preparing our military, which is what he was upset about. It was like in circles on that question.
I and my predecessors, both Democrats and Republicans, have advocated resolving those troubles and those difficult areas of the world peacefully, diplomatically, and through negotiation. In addition to that, the buildup of military forces is good for our country.
Yeah, but he helped build it while they were getting ready to fight the Nazis.
The peace. But I'll always remember that the best weapons are the ones that are never fired in combat, and the best soldier is one who never has to lay his life.
And it was like, oh shit, we don't need to let people wield this mechanism. And he was right.
It's imperative for peace, but the two must go hand in hand.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question is from Harry Ellis to President Carter.
Mr. President, when you were elected in 1976, the Consumer Price Index stood at 4.8%. It now stands at more than 12%. Perhaps more significantly, the nation's broader underlying inflation rate has gone up from 7 to 9%.
Yeah, I figured this would have been the first question.
Part of that was due to external factors beyond U.S. control, notably the more than doubling of oil prices by OPEC last year. Because the United States remains vulnerable to such external shocks, can inflation, in fact, be controlled? If so, what measures would you pursue in a second term?
Again, it's important to put the situation into perspective. In 1974, we had a so-called oil shock, wherein the price of OPEC oil was raised to an
Wait, does he have some kind of...
We had an even worse
pencil around his lip, his upper lip?
In 1974, we had the worst recession.
He draws his lip on. Finbox, good evening.
The Second World War. The recession that resulted this time was the briefest we've had since the Second World War. In addition, we've brought down inflation. Early this year, the first quarter, we did have a very severe inflation pressure brought about by the OPEC price increase. It averaged about 18% the first quarter of this year. The second quarter, we had dropped it down to about 13%. The most recent figures, the last 3 months of the third quarter of this year, the inflation rate is 7%. Still too high, but it illustrates very vividly that in addition to providing an enormous number of jobs, 9 million new jobs in the last 3.5 years, that the inflationary threat is still urgent on us. I noticed that Governor Reagan recently mentioned the Reagan-Kemp-Roth proposal, which his own running mate, George Bush, described as voodoo economics, and said that it would result in a 30% inflation rate.
Gurgle down.
Which is not a Democratic publication, said that this Reagan-Kemp-Roth proposal, and I quote them, I think, was completely irresponsible and would result in inflationary pressures which would destroy this nation. So our proposals are very sound and very carefully considered to stimulate jobs, to improve the industrial complex of this country.
I feel like a makeup person might have been like...
And at the same time would be anti...
It looks like you don't have an upper lip. We need to draw this on.
9 million new jobs, to control inflation, and to plan for the future with the energy policy now intact as a foundation.
If you're watching it on TV in 480p over the air.
Follow-up question from Mr. Carter.
Yes, Mr. President, you have mentioned the creation of 9 million new jobs. At the same time, the unemployment rate still hangs high, as does the inflation rate. Now, I wonder, can you tell us what additional policies you would pursue
480I interlaced, exactly, question mark.
in order to try to bring down that
Welcome in, my
inflation
friend.
rate? And would it be an act of leadership to tell the American people they're going to have to sacrifice?
Yeah, what was I thinking? They didn't have fucking progressive scans back
for
then.
some time to come.
Yes, we have demanded that the American people sacrifice, and they've done very well. As a matter of fact, we are importing today
Was that being facetious?
than we did just a
Tim
year ago.
Fox?
We've had
Especially considering that
since the first year I was in office.
Reagan.
As I said earlier, we have added.
What's the act where you can't fucking negotiate with a foreign government when you're not the president?
Also, the new energy policy has been predicated on two factors. One, conservation, which requires sacrifice, and the other one, increase in production of American energy, which is going along very well. More coal this year.
Absolutely colluded with the Iranians.
Oil and gas wells drilled this year than ever before in history.
In the Iran hostage crisis.
Revitalization program that we have in mind, which will be implemented next year, would result in tax credits, which would let business invest in new tools and new factories to create even more new jobs, about 1 million in the next 2 years. And we also have planned a youth employment program, which would encompass 600,000 jobs for young people. This has already passed the House, now has an excellent prospect to pass the Senate.
Now the same question goes to Governor Reagan. Governor Reagan, would you like to have the question repeated?
Governor Reagan, during the past 4 years, the consumer price index
Nixon was spying on his opponent.
4.8%.
I can go back through history.
Over 12%. And perhaps more significantly, the nation's broader underlying rate of inflation.
Fuck it, you want me to go way back? Fucking,
Now, a part of that has been due to
Jefferson
factors beyond U.S. control.
took out,
and notably,
started his own newspaper to call his political opponent a hermaphrodite.
Which leads me to ask you whether, since the United States remains vulnerable to such external shocks, can inflation in fact be controlled?
Hold on, it's a great quote. I butchered it too.
What measures would you
As I always do with quotes.
Mr. Ellis, I think this idea that has been spawned here in our country that inflation somehow came upon us like a plague and therefore it's uncontrollable and no one can do anything about it is entirely spurious, and it's dangerous to say this to the people. When Mr. Carter became president,
Called
inflation
him a hideous.
was 4.8%, as you said. It had been cut in two.
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted.
It is now running at 12.7%.
Called him a hideous hermaphroditical character, which has neither the force and firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. Apparently, that is a spurious quote. It's debated of whether it was actually Jefferson.
President Carter also has spoken of the new jobs created. Well, we always, with the normal growth in our country and increase in population, increase the number of jobs, but that can't hide the...
Oh, okay. Remember I said that Jefferson started a paper to call his opponent a hermaphrodite. Those words were not written by Thomas Jefferson, but by James Callender, the newspaper editor. So there you go.
fact that there are 8 million men and women out of work in America today, and 2 million of those lost their jobs in just the last few months. Mr. Carter had also promised that he would not use unemployment as a tool to fight.
Yeah, and it was Adams. It was John Adams.
And yet his 1980 economic message stated that we would reduce productivity and gross national product and increase unemployment in order to get a handle on inflation, because in January, at the beginning of the year, it was more than 18%. Since then, he has blamed to the people for inflation OPEC. He's blamed the Federal Reserve System. He has blamed the lack of productivity of the American people. He has then accused the people of living too well, and that we must share in
those last two, this is like bullshit.
Get used to doing with less. We don't have inflation because the people are living too well. We have inflation because the government is living too well. And the last statement, just a few days ago, was a speech to the effect that we have inflation because government revenues have not kept pace with government spending. I see my time is running out here. I'll have to get this down very fast. Yes, you can lick inflation by increasing productivity and by decreasing the cost of government to the place that we have balanced budgets and are no longer grinding out printing press money, flooding the market with it because the government is spending more than it takes in. And my economic plan calls for that. The president's economic plan calls for increasing the taxes to the point that we finally take so much money away from the people that we can balance the budget in that way. But we will have a very poor nation and a very unsound economy.
Weird that when we had high corporate tax rates, the most prosperous we've ever
You
been.
have centered on cutting government spending in what you have just said about your own policies. You have also said that you would increase defense spending. Specifically,
I gotta see this picture now, Mama.
Government spending if you were to increase defense spending and also cut taxes so that presumably federal revenues would shrink.
Most people, when they think about cutting government spending, they think in terms of eliminating necessary programs or wiping out some service
What a
the government is
face.
supposed to perform. I believe that there is enough extravagance and fat in government. As a matter of fact, one of the secretaries of
I don't believe that's the picture they use of him on a beer can, is it?
HW under Mr. Carter testified that he thought there was $7 billion worth of fraud and waste in welfare.
That's Samuel Adams, I'm sorry. I'm not a beer drinker.
We've had the General Accounting Office estimate that there is probably tens of billions of dollars that is lost in fraud alone, and they have added that waste adds even more to that. We have a program for a gradual reduction of government spending based on these theories, and I have a task force now that has been
He's
working
introducing
on
his Doge.
those cuts could be made.
Doge
I'm
agency.
confident that it can be done and that it will reduce inflation because I did it in California. And inflation went down below the national average in California when we returned money to the people and reduced government spending.
President Carter.
Governor Reagan's proposal, the Reagan-Kemp-Roth proposal, is one of the most highly inflationary ideas that ever has been presented to the American public. He would actually have to cut government spending by at least $130 billion in order to balance the budget under this ridiculous proposal. I noticed that his task force is working for his future plans.
Cut government spending while increasing military.
Journal this week. One of those ideas was to repeal the minimum wage. And several times this year, Governor Reagan has said that the major cause of unemployment is the minimum wage. This is a heartless kind of approach to the working families of our country, which is typical of many Republican leaders in the past, but I think has been accentuated under Governor Reagan. In California, I'm surprised Governor Reagan brought this up, he had the three largest tax increases in the history of that state under his administration. He more than doubled state spending while he was governor, 122% increase, and had between a 20 and 30% increase in the number of employees.
Sorry to interrupt,
in
Mr.
California.
Carter.
Thank you, sir.
It's Governor Reagan has the last word on this question.
Yes. The figures that the president has just used about California is a distortion of the situation there, because while I was governor of California, our spending in California increased less per capita than the spending in Georgia while Mr. Carter was governor of Georgia in the same 4 years. The size of government increased only 1/6 in California of what it increased in proportion to population in Georgia. And the idea that my tax cut proposal is inflationary, I would like to ask the president, why is it inflationary to let the people keep more of their money and spend it the way they'd like, and it isn't inflationary to let him take that money and spend it the way he wants?
I wish that question need not be rhetorical, but it must be because we run out of time on that. Now,
No, let Carter answer it.
question to Governor Reagan.
God damn it.
William Hilliard.
Yes, Governor Reagan, the decline of our cities has been hastened by the continual rise in crime,
Bullshit.
strained race relations, the fall in the quality of public education, the persistence
Once again,
of
I'm
poverty in a rich
hindsight. That is one of the most
and a
pivotal
decline in the
questions that they
services
were
to the
asked.
public.
Those are one of the most
The
pivotal
signs
policies of the
point
Reagan
toward a
administration
deterioration
that
that could
still
lead to the
reverberates in
establishment
my life.
underclass in the cities. What specifically would you do in the next 4 years to reverse this trend?
I have been talking to a number of
Light
congressmen
one up, tip one back.
who have much the same idea that I have, and that is that in the inner city areas, that in cooperation with local government and with national government and using tax incentives and with cooperation with the private sector, that we have development zones. Let the local entity, the city, declare this particular area based on the standards of the percentage of people on welfare, unemployed, and so forth in that area. And then through tax incentives, induce the creation of businesses providing jobs and so forth in those areas. The elements of government through these tax incentives, for example, a business that would not have for a period of time an increase in the property tax reflecting its development of the unused property that it was making, wouldn't be any loss to the city because the city isn't getting any tax from that now. And there would simply be a delay, and on the other hand, many of the people that would then be given jobs are presently employees of the government, and it wouldn't hurt to give them a tax incentive.
Hell of a jump scare.
That wouldn't be costing government anything either. I think there are things to do in this regard. I stood in the South Bronx on the exact spot that President Carter stood on in 1977. You have to see it to believe it. It looks like a bombed-out city. Great gaunt skeletons of buildings.
In the Bronx?
Smashed out.
1980?
On one of them.
Oh, God, yeah.
On another, despair. And this was the spot at which President Carter had promised that he was going to bring in a vast program to rebuild this department. There are this area, there are whole blocks of land that are left bare, just bulldozed down flat. And nothing has been done, and they are now charging to take tourists through there to see this terrible desolation. I talked to a man just briefly there who asked me one simple question. Do I have reason to hope that I can someday take care of my family again? Nothing has been done.
Follow up, Mr. Hilliard.
Yeah, wait till you see what Reagan does.
Blacks and other non-whites are increasing in numbers in our cities. Many of them feel that they are facing a hostility from whites that prevents them from joining the economic mainstream of our society. There is racial confrontation in the schools, on jobs, and in housing as non-whites seek to reap the benefits of a free society. What do you think is the nation's future as a multiracial society?
I believe in it. I am eternally optimistic, and I happen to believe that we've made great progress from the days when I was young and when this country didn't even know it had a racial problem. I know those things can grow out of despair in an inner city. When there's
this country most certainly always knew it had a racial problem. A lot of people wanted to sweep it under the rug.
All of us together, and I believe the presidency is what Teddy Roosevelt said it was. It's a bully pulpit. And I think that something can be done from there, because the goal for all of us should be that one day things will be done.
I can show you abolitionists in the 1600s.
Any of the differences between us, ethnic differences or racial differences, whatever they may be, that we will have total equal opportunity for all people. And I would do everything I could in my power to bring that about.
Mr. Hilliard, would you repeat your question for President Carter?
President Carter, the decline of our cities has been hastened by the continual rise in crime, strained race relations, the fall in the quality of public education, the persistence of abnormal poverty in a rich nation, and a decline in services to the public. The signs seem to point toward a deterioration that could lead to the establishment of a permanent underclass in the cities. What specifically would you do in the next 4 years to reverse this trend?
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. When I was campaigning in 1976, everywhere I went, the mayors and local officials were in despair about the rapidly deteriorating central cities of our nation. We initiated a very fine urban renewal program, working with the mayors, the governors, and other interested officials. This has been a very successful effort. That's one of the main reasons that we've had such an increase in the number of people employed. Of the 9 million people put to work in new jobs since I've been in office, 1.3 million of those has been among black Americans and another million among those who speak Spanish. We're now planning to continue the revitalization program with increased commitments of rapid transit, mass transit. Under the windfall profits tax, we expect to spend about $43 billion in the next 10 years to rebuild the transportation systems of our country. We also are pursuing the housing programs. We've had a 73% increase.
So basically, the year is 1980.
Improved education. These are the kinds of efforts
we're coming off of a oil crisis,
particularly in the minority areas of essential cities that had been deteriorating so rapidly in the past.
As cars have become...
It's very important to us that this be done with the
Central
full
to your
involvement
life
of
as an
minority
American.
citizens. I brought into the top levels of government.
Prices are skyrocketing.
Administrative
The world looks like it's fucking on fire as Russia is invading Afghanistan. Iran has our hostages at this moment.
And women who in the past had been excluded. I noticed that Governor Reagan said that when he was a younger man, that there was no knowledge of a racial problem.
South America is a
Those who
hotbed.
suffered from discrimination because of race or sex certainly knew we had a racial problem. We have
The
gone a long
70s were
way
a
toward
turbulent
correcting these
decade.
problems,
We had riots
but
in
we
the
still have a long
streets.
way to go.
Follow-up question?
Mention Brooklyn.
Yes,
New
President.
York
I'd like to
was
repeat the same
a
follow-up to
fucking
you.
war zone. They talk about
Blacks
Chicago
and
being a
non-whites
war
are
zone
increasing
now.
numbers in our cities. Many of them feel that they are facing a hostility from whites that prevents them from joining
The
the
Escape
economic
New York
mainstream of
movie,
our
that fucking,
society.
that's not far off from
There
what
is
it
racial
actually looked
confrontation in
like.
schools, on jobs, and in housing.
Because it was
non-whites seek to reap the benefits of a free society.
a rundown
What is your
city that
assessment
hadn't
of the
had
nation's
investment
as a
in it.
future in multiracial society?
Ours is a nation of refugees, a nation of immigrants.
The white
Almost all of our
flights,
citizens
there's a
came
lot of
here from
turbulent shit
other
going
lands,
on. And then you're
and
faced
now
with the option of this
have
milk
hopes
toast
which
motherfucker
are
right
being
here.
realized for a better life, preserving their ethnic commitments, their family structures, their
Who was
religious
probably
beliefs,
doing the best job he fucking could,
preserving
given the
their relationships
circumstances.
with their
He was
relatives in foreign countries, but still forming themselves together in a
Put
very
in.
coherent society, which gives our nation its strength. In the past,
then
those
you're
minority
faced with
groups
slip-talking con
have
man
often
over
been
there that
excluded
used to be a
from
Hollywood
participation in the
actor.
affairs of government. Since
I
I've
see
been
why
president of
America
California,
made
for
the
instance,
decision they did.
more than twice as many black federal judges as all previous presidents in the history of this country.
Reagan was
I've done
one
the
of the
same thing
most
in
consequential
the
presidents,
and also
definitely of my
Spanish-speaking
lifetime,
Americans,
is the most
to involve
consequential
them in
president of my
administration of
lifetime.
government, and a feeling that they belong to the societal
So
structure
far.
that makes decisions in the judiciary and in the executive branch is a very important commitment, which I am trying to realize and will continue to do so in the future.
Governor Reagan, you have a minute for rebuttal.
Yes, the president talks of government programs, and they have their place. But as governor, when I was
Because
at that
Carter's
end of the line
defeat
and
is the
receiving
exact
some of these
reason you
grants for
get
government programs, I
Bill
saw that
Clinton,
many of them were
your
dead
third-way
There
Democrat.
were public employment for these people who really want to get out into the private job
Welfare
market where there are
reform.
jobs with a future. Now, the president spoke a
Fiscal
moment ago about
responsibility.
that I was against the minimum wage. I wish he could have been with me when I sat with a group of teenagers who were black and who were telling me about their unemployment problems, and that it was the minimum wage that had done away with the jobs that they once could get. And indeed, every time it has increased, you will find that there is an increase in minority unemployment among young people.
What job is that?
And therefore, I have been in favor of a separate minimum for them. With regard to the great progress that has been made with this government spending, the rate of black unemployment in Detroit, Michigan is 56%.
President Carter, you have the last word on this question.
Well, it's obvious that we still have a long way to go.
Did he
in
just say he wanted to pay,
incorporating the minority
pay black
groups
people
into the
less
mainstream
money?
of American life. We have made good progress. And there's no doubt in my mind that the commitment to unemployment compensation, the minimum wage, welfare, national health insurance, those kinds of commitments that have typified the Democratic Party since ancient history in this country's political life are a very important element of the future. In all those elements, Governor Reagan has repeatedly spoken out against them, which to me shows a very great insensitivity to giving deprived families a better chance in life. This, to me, is a very important difference between him and me in this election, and I believe the American people will judge accordingly. There is no doubt in my mind that in the downtown central cities, with the new commitment on an energy policy, with a chance to revitalize homes and to make them more fuel efficient, with a chance for a synthetic fuels program, solar power, this will give us an additional opportunity for jobs which will pay rich dividends.
Thank you, gentlemen.
This entire time, I've thought there was like something, a short in my cord or something. No, it was the microphone was just flipping down.
Gentlemen, now for the fourth question to President Carter from Barbara Walters.
Mr. President, the eyes of the country tonight are on the hostages in Iran. I realize this is a sensitive area, but the question of how we respond to acts of terrorism goes beyond this current crisis. Other countries have policies that determine how they will respond. Israel, for example, considers hostages like soldiers and will not negotiate with terrorists. For the future, Mr. President, the country has the right to know, do you have a policy?
Israel considers hostages as if they're enemy soldiers.
And what have we learned from this experience in Iran that might cause us to do things differently if this or something similar happens again?
Barbara, one of the blights on this world is the threat and the activities of terrorists. At one of the recent economic summit conferences between myself and the other leaders of the Western world, we committed ourselves to take strong action against terrorism. Airplane hijacking was one of the elements of that commitment. There is no doubt that we have seen in recent years, in recent months, additional acts of violence against Jews in France, and of course against those who live in Israel by the PLO and other terrorist.
Oh yeah, and also I've not brought up lead paint.
Ultimately, the most serious terror.
Lead paint had a lot to do with the way the country was at this time.
Policy should have atomic weapons. Both I and all my predecessors have had a deep commitment to controlling the proliferation of nuclear weapons in countries like.
I like the way he says nuclear.
We have even alienated some of our closest trade partners because we have insisted upon the control of the spread of nuclear weapons to those terrorist countries. When Governor Reagan has been asked about that, he makes a very disturbing comment that non-proliferation or the control of the spread of nuclear weapons is none of our business. And when he was asked specifically recently about Iraq, he said there's nothing we can do about it. This ultimate terrorist threat is the most fearsome of all, and it's part of a pattern where our country must stand firm to control terrorism of all kinds.
Ms. Walters, a follow-up?
Yes, while we are discussing policy, had Iran not taken American hostages, I assume that in order to preserve our neutrality, we would have stopped the flow of spare parts and vital war materials once war broke out between Iraq and Iran. Now we're offering to lift the ban on such goods if they let our people come home. Doesn't this reward terrorism, compromise our neutrality, and possibly antagonize nations now friendly to us in the Middle East?
We will maintain our position of neutrality in the Iran and Iraq war. We have no plans to sell additional material or goods to Iran that might be of a warlike nature. When I made my decision to stop all trade with Iran as a result of the taking of our hostages, I announced then and have consistently maintained since then that if the hostages are released safely, that we would make delivery on those items which Iran owns, which they have bought and paid for. Also, that the frozen Iranian assets would be released. That's been a consistent policy.
That has still been a fucking political football to this day, the frozen Iranian assets.
Yes. Governor, the eyes of the country tonight remain on the hostages in Iran, but the question of how we respond.
According to the Republicans, Biden giving that money back finally to the Iranians
respond. Israel, for
was what funded October 7th.
And will not negotiate with terrorists. For the future, the country has the right to know, do you have a policy for dealing with terrorism wherever it might happen? And what have we learned from this experience in Iran that might cause us to do things differently if this or something similar should happen again?
Barbara, you've asked that question twice. I think you ought to have at least one answer to it. I have been accused lately of having a secret plan with regard to the hostages. Now, this comes from an answer that I've made at least 50 times during this campaign to the press, which is that the question would be, have you any ideas of what you would do if you were there? And I've said, well, yes. And I think that anyone that's seeking this position, as well as other people probably, have thought to themselves, what about this, what about that? These are just ideas of what I would think of if I were in that position and had access to the information in which I would know all the options that were open to me. I have never answered the question, however, second, The one that says, well, tell me, what are some of those ideas? First of all, I would be fearful that I might say something that was presently underway or in negotiations and thus expose it and endanger the hostages. And sometimes I think some of my ideas might involve quiet diplomacy where you don't say in advance or say to anyone what it is you're thinking of doing. Your question is difficult to answer because in the situation right now, no one wants to say anything that would inadvertently delay in any way the return of those hostages if there is a chance of their coming home soon, or that might cause them harm. What I do think should be done,
yes, he's nailing the landing
here with their families, and that tragedy is over. And we've endured this humiliation for just lacking 1 week of a year now. Then I think it is time for us to have a complete investigation as to the diplomatic efforts that were made in the beginning, why they have been there so long, and when they come home, what did we have to do in order to bring that about?
We had an investigation. We found out that Ronald Reagan was involved.
Such an investigation.
And making sure our hostages stayed there.
They'll come home.
Follow-up question.
Georgie, good evening.
They answered specifically the question of a specific policy for dealing with terrorism, but I will ask Governor Reagan a different follow-up question.
I think you got here just in time because I'm getting ready to transition to
had you been president.
Police chase.
We would have given firmer support to the Shah. But Iran is a country of...
I'm fascinated by this. They're on a...
They regard it as dictatorial. My question is not whether the Shah...
Very consequential topic.
...to the Ayatollahs.
This is the 1980 presidential debate between
to try to determine what form
recently deceased Jimmy Carter
and do we back unpopular regimes whose major merit
and longtime deceased Ronald Reagan?
States.
The degree of unpopularity of a regime, when the choice is total authoritarianism, totalitarianism, I should say, in the alternative government, makes one wonder whether you are being helpful to the people. And we've been guilty of that. Because someone didn't meet exactly our standards of human rights, even though they were an ally of ours, instead of trying patiently to persuade them to change their ways, we have, in a number of instances, aided a revolutionary overthrow which results in complete totalitarianism instead for those people.
Wait, is this based Ronald Reagan?
Hypocritical policy, when at the same time we're maintaining a détente with the one nation in the world where there are no human rights at all, the Soviet Union. Now, there was a second phase in the Iranian affair.
I don't think that's true.
Something to do with that. And that was we had adequate warning that there was a threat to our embassy, and we could have done what other embassies did, either strengthen our security there or remove our personnel before the kidnap and the takeover took place.
Governor, I'm sorry, I must interrupt. President Carter, you have a minute for rebuttal.
I didn't hear any comment from Governor Reagan about...
He said the USSR had no civil rights.
Future. What the Western allies did decide to do is to stop all air flights, commercial air
So
flights.
I said I don't think that's true.
In terrorism or the hijacking of airplanes or the harboring of hijackers. Secondly, we all committed ourselves, as have all my predecessors in the Oval Office, not to permit the spread of nuclear weapons to a terrorist nation or to any other nation that does not presently have those weapons or capabilities for explosives.
This has been a fascinating watch.
Weapons.
We're about halfway through it right
which is
now.
Involved in terrorist activities. And lastly, not to deal with the PLO until and unless the PLO recognizes Israel's right to exist and recognizes UN Resolution 242 as a basis for Middle East peace. These are a few of the things to which our nation is committed, and we will continue with these commitments.
Governor Reagan, you have the last word on that question.
Yes, I have no quarrel whatsoever with the things that have been done because I believe it is high time that the civilized countries of the world made it plain that there is no room worldwide for terrorism. There will be no negotiation with terrorists of any kind. And while I have a last word here, I would like to correct a misstatement of fact by the President. I have never made the statement that he suggested about nuclear proliferation, and nuclear proliferation or the trying to halt it would be a major part of a foreign policy of mine.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is the first half of the debate. Now the rules for the second half, quite simple. They're only complicated when I explain them. second half, the panelists with me will have no follow-up questions. Instead, after the panelists have asked a question the candidates have answered, each of the candidates will have 2 opportunities to follow up, to question, to rebut, or just to comment on his opponent's statement. Governor Reagan will respond in this section to the first question.
2 men enter, 1 man leave.
Governor Reagan,
I fucked that completely up. I'm sorry.
President
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Both of you have expressed the desire to end the nuclear arms race with Russia, but...
And we'll cut it off at the first half there. That was fascinating to watch. Reliance on foreign oil. The topics are arms race and treaties, reliance on foreign oil, Social Security. Let's jump to this. Reagan versus Carter, the opposition.
Mr. President, Governor Reagan, we now go to another question. Question to President Carter by Barbara Walters.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the dog.
Some of the major issues tonight, but the biggest...
I mean, he said a couple of really stupid things.
...is yourselves, your ability to lead this country. When many voters go into that booth just a week...
Wasn't as funny as eating the cats,
gut instinct about you men. You've already given us your reasons why people should vote for you. Now, would you please tell us for this, your final question, why they should not vote for your opponent, why his presidency could be harmful to the nation, and having examined both your opponent's record and the man himself, tell us his greatest weakness.
Barbara, reluctant as I am to say anything critical about Governor Reagan, I'll try to answer your question. First of all is the historical perspective that I've just described. This is a contest between a Democrat and the mainstream of my party, as exemplified by the actions that I've taken in the Oval Office the last 4 years, as contrasted with Governor Reagan, who in most cases does typify his party, but in some cases there is a radical departure by him from the heritage of Eisenhower and others. The most important, crucial difference in this election campaign, in my judgment, is the approach to the control of nuclear weaponry and the inclination to control or not to control the spread of atomic weapons to other nations that don't presently have it, particularly the terrorist nations. The inclination that Governor Reagan
Talks over there chilling out on the heated blanket.
In many troubled times since he's been running for president, I think since 1968, to inject American military forces in places like North Korea, to put a blockade around Cuba this year, or in some instances to project American forces into a fishing dispute against the small nation of Ecuador on the west coast of South America. This is typical of his long-standing inclination on the use of American power not to resolve disputes diplomatically and peacefully.
There's something going on here. I don't know what the fuck it is.
That the exercise of military power
shit.
is best proven by the actual use of it. Obviously, no president wants war. And I certainly do not believe that Governor Reagan, if he were president, would want war.
If you have been watching Saturday Night Live with us, we are coming up on this election.
On a daily basis about how to exercise the enormous...
Or on Carter's election, I'm sorry.
Through diplomacy, or in a careless way, in a belligerent attitude, which has exemplified his attitudes in the past.
Barbara, would you repeat the question for Governor Reagan?
Yes, thank you. Realizing that you may be equally reluctant to speak ill of your opponent, may I ask why people should not vote for your opponent, why his presidency could be harmful to the nation, and having examined both your opponent's record and the man himself, could you tell us his greatest weakness?
Well, Barbara, I believe that there is a fundamental difference, and I think it has been evident in most of the answers that Mr. Carter has given tonight, that he seeks the solution to anything as another opportunity for a federal government program. I happen to believe that the federal government has usurped powers and autonomy and authority that belongs back at the state and local level. It has imposed on the individual freedoms of the people, and that there are more of these things that could be solved by the people themselves if they were given a chance, or by the levels of government that were closer to them.
Hey, you full shit, Reagan. Go to L.A. You know what's up. It's time for a police chase. Oh, apparently we're no audio on this. We don't get Chris Christie giving us commentary. That's okay with me. Actually, you know what? Since we have no audio, most of you guys are watching. Hold on, we'll go Twitch only, and then I can play some music and shit. We'll do fucking around stream. Let me go ahead. We'll wrap the Troll Patrol up. We'll watch the police chase, and we'll play some music and shit. We'll have fun. I got an awesome animal video for you tonight. It was a Christmas miracle. You want to see the birth of a baby pygmy hippo? Well, hopefully not the birth.
Just in time for the holidays, Metro Richmond Zoo welcoming a baby pygmy hippo. Take a look at this video here on your screen. According to the zoo's website, the baby
don't really want to watch it, get plopped out.
PM back on December 9th. The pygmy hippo coming in at 15 pounds, the zoo says. Grown
That's a big fucker.
Hippos can weigh up to 600 pounds. The zoo says this is the third calf from the pygmy hippo parents, Iris and Corin, and the second right before the holidays. Right now, the baby not ready, though, to be seen in a public exhibit. So just in time for the holidays, Metro Richmond Zoo welcoming a
It's adorable.
hippo. Take a look at this video here on your screen. According to the zoo's website, the baby
Would you pet a hippo? Who would pet a hippo?
PM back on December 9th. The pygmy hippo coming in at 15 pounds, the zoo says.
Looks greasy, though.
Can weigh up to 600 pounds. The zoo says this is the third calf from the pygmy hippo parents, Iris and Corin, and the second right before the holidays. Right now, the baby not ready, though, to be seen in a public exhibit. So just in time for the holidays.
Motherfucker looks like it's coming back from a P. Diddy party.
Hippo. Take a look at this video here on your screen. According to the zoo's website, the baby hippo arrived at 4:50 p.m. back on December.
That's why they call it baby oil.
Pygmy hippo coming in at 15 pounds. The zoo says grown pygmy hippos can weigh up to 600 pounds.
Oh, shit.
This is the third calf from the pygmy hippo parents, Iris and Corin.
What the fuck is wrong with me?
The second right before the holidays. Right now, the baby not ready, though, to be seen in a public exhibit. So just in time for the holidays, Metro Richmond Zoo.
I love the up close camera shot with his nose right in the camera.
Screen. According to the zoo's website, the baby
eat your ass like it's Alex Jones.
PM back on December 9th.
If you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, go ahead, light one up, tip one back. It's all right to have a little fun before we read the sack.
This is the third.
I'm JustinFREAKIN. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Iris and Corin.
We're doing New Year's Eve.
Right now, the baby not ready.
We'll do New Year's Eve Troll Patrol, and then we'll be on Twitch for the countdown and the concerts and all that good shit.
On your screen, according to the zoo's website, the baby.
Good night, everybody.
4:50 p.m. back.
I mean, not everybody. That doesn't include the Twitch audience. We're gonna watch that police chase. We're gonna listen to music while we do it.
Who says this is the third calf
after I cut YouTube off.
Parents Iris and Corin, and the second right before the holidays.